Well, I guess I have to get back to work, real work. And this is one of the saws that came in, and apparently it needs a new top end. It's an MS362C. And these are nice saws, there's no doubt. So I guess I better start by taking off that chain. Look at the burr on that bar. Unbelievable. This bar is effectively worthless. And take a look at the teeth. On that chain. I mean, they're just keened over effectively. Alright, look at that sprocket. That sprocket's wore out too. Obviously got an anti-lock material in this stuff. This thing's not coming apart easy at all. These guys went through some pretty interesting gymnastics in order to get their spring mounting system, which is essentially the same as their competitor, Husqvarna. Mounts the same place, but look how they go about doing it. So instead of just really simply having the bar attached to the tank handle, they've got to come up with this arrangement where the handle itself has a spring instead of the spring going to the tank handle. So basically, you do got to pop off these anti-vibes in order to get this plastic out, in order to pull the carburetor out, you know. And you can just lay over here, I'm not going to fight it. And like the standard Stihl configuration, you've got your fuel line right here, where your spear from the carburetor goes into that. Here's your pulse. There's that ring, they all have it. This is for the straddle port, you know. And like the Husqvarna, it's almost exactly the same as like a 450. You've got that little air valve. And it's kind of like their version of an auto tune, I guess. So let's get this off of here. Can't forget that ring. And they've got a support ring on the inside, just like Husqvarna. See, the ignition is in the same spot that the... See, there's just a lot of stuff that's the same in this layout as the MS362 is. I mean, it looks pretty solid on the inside. The layout's very much similar to the 660. It's typical Stihl, you know. It's raining so hard you can probably hear it, and you probably can't hear me. But this is a 362 that needed the top end replaced. And here's the 362 top end. It's got the metal gasket, as Stihls typically do. And the only thing wrong with this is they cross-threaded the spark plug, so it's no longer any good. And I was asked to swap things around. But if you're a Stihl person, it's going to look familiar because of the way the cases are, the chain brake, and the general layout of the ignition, the flywheel, and things like that is very much Stihl. It's very much retained what they've had in the past. Here's a earlier generation Stihl for a reference. You know, so there's a lot of things that are pretty much the same, but they kind of took the 372 approach almost, where you see the cases extend back here. So they've added this kind of a concept, and instead of just a tray, they kind of blended the tray into the bulkhead for the airbox. So that's pretty interesting. They kind of still have the Stihl airbox concept, but they also have kind of like a Husqvarna style case. So it looks like Stihl moved closer to Husqvarna than Husqvarna moved to Stihl. Again, this is how Husky did it instead of this, right? This goes directly to the case. And what Stihl did is they have this inserted into here, so they basically separated that so it's different, right? And of course, instead of directly connected there, they put this over here, but it's still the same basic system. You see it? And instead of having that tray, they've got this for a tray, but also the bulkhead. And here's the competitive Husqvarna, which, by the way, it's no dream to work on either. So they both, I mean, like I kind of got used to working on the 660s to the point where it was pretty easy. But look at the similarities between these two saws. And they went from this, which is very much like the old Stihls, to this, which has a lot of Husqvarna influence in it. I don't really care how you look at it, you just can't ignore that. See how the cases come back here, cases come back here, anti-vibe, anti-vibe, anti-vibe here, and I showed you the handle, anti-vibe, and then of course underneath you have the spring directly to the tank to the case, and what they did is this goes to the case, this inserts into the front of the tank handle. So it's kind of the same concept, just a little bit different. And of course, feeding the air box, you see that, you've seen the horn go from the pull start area flywheel to the air box for decades on the Husky, and now they have that with this here on the Stihl. So this is picked up a lot more from Husqvarna than Husqvarna has picked up from Stihl. About the only thing I'm seeing on the new Huskies that has sort of a Stihl kind of influence is they kind of went to the T27 screws instead of the Allen. Now, on the cylinders, Stihl has their own thing. But let's start from here. Some of the newer Stihls have done what the Husky did. Like if I find a 461 cylinder, I've got one around here somewhere. Here's a 461. They're beginning to wrap up from the front. And of course Husky did that first. But notice that now this Stihl has the flange. Huskies had that for a very long time. But I like the way they're doing the transfers. Look at that. But interestingly enough, these are roughly the same displacement saws. Take a look at the difference in intake. Here, check out the piston. Here's a 562 piston. They're doing the same kinds of things with the Stratos. And if you look at some of the really high performance two-strokes that are out there, having the transfers feed from all different quadrants, believe it or not, that's not unusual. That's a really cool design right there. But it also should give you pause when you guys, both these cylinders should, when you guys read online that all things bigger when it comes to ports is better. I don't know. Take a look at these. And these are both very, very good designs. They have a lot of RPMs and they have a lot of power. And I think these designs are more about efficiency than just more of everything. There's no crossover there. I mean, it's a Strato, sure, but the Stihl is a lot more compact. I kind of like that versus these big long transfers. Just me. How about that? Give something for people to argue about. And these saws here, I'm a fan. I don't care what anyone says. This is a 461. I'm a fan of these. They're a little crude, you know, you get a lot of that crap in there. So, I'm a fan. I really don't see an elegant way to do this. Just kind of mash things together. I know it's a pain, but don't use any sharp objects to do this. Kind of do it the hard way. That's the only thing I can tell you. Got to make sure the fuel line is right down in there. Okay. Just nice and clean. I have to say that that arrangement right there, that is easier than the older ones. So. Cannot forget that little support ring right there. So that throttle operating rod pushes on this piece right here and it wears into it. But it also wears into that piece of plastic right there. See how that goes? And there's going to be a point in time where you start seeing where you can't get into full throttle anymore. I kind of like the way they have their wires in there. I do like that. See how that operates? The operating rod pushing up on that. And see how the carburetor spears into the fuel line. I guess the only way to see if it's right is to try it out. It's just not quite as positive as I would have expected. Alright, I'm going to go with that. And then we're going to try to get this thing back together. Give it a start and see if it works. Put the muffler back on there. So here's my cut on this saw to this point in time. Like this here, I actually think that's easier for me. I've done a lot of 562, so I've gotten to where I know how to do it quickly. And being able to pull that tray bulkhead out of there, I think that kind of makes it easier for me to put that thing back together. And it's easier to install the carburetor and the controls than it is the Husqvarna. But other than that, it's about a wash. And I think the message to me is with both these saws and a lot of the new saws is once you work your way through them, they're not that bad. This one here is not as bad as my initial impression was when I first started getting into it. I was like, oh my god, I hate this. But after getting all the way through it, coming back out the other side, comparing it with the other Stihls I've worked on, it's really not that bad. It's a little more of a pain in the neck than some of the older Stihls. But actually having this be able to separate from the handle, I think is a big plus, the bulkhead. And like all Stihls, I kind of like the way the mufflers are mounted. I really do. But I guess at the end of the day, it's just a saw. You know? Well, one thing I noticed right off the bat, I don't have a primer bulb on these. So let's go put it on full choke. Let's see what happens. Well, it's a snappy saw, I can tell you that. Alright, probably want to tune it up a little bit before I let it go. I think it's ready. It's a good running saw right there. I don't know if I need to go run it into some test wood or not, but I think that's a strong saw. So what I'm going to do is put that build, which is probably about 3 hours total, back to back with the 362, just so you can see, you know, what happens when you have to do a top end on both those two saws. Talk to you later.